Seems to me that the characteristics of a good ecosystem service decision-making system actually boil down to just three. You need sound science, you need sound valuation, and you also need sound costing. And costing may not be the same as valuation, and I'll come on to that right at the end of the talk. So I'm going to go through all three of these. But I want to start with some context. And the UK context is particularly interesting because they actually take it seriously there. They really do make decisions on the basis of the ecosystem service approach and on valuations of ecosystem services. They've got one of the longest histories of applying it, and you can see the variety of applications there. So taxes for landfill, for cars, regulation of wetlands first and then nearly all natural areas now. Recreation, both urban and rural being planned using values. Climate policy being driven by values. I think it was a valid attempt. What they tried to do is say, well, you know, you can decompose the UK into a whole set of habitats and you can look at the various values that these generate, and therefore each cell tells you about how important a given habitat is to a given service. So obviously enclosed farmland is very important for crops, that's why it's shaded dark. The arrows are the things that are interesting though. They tell you about the trend in that service. Is it going up? Is it going down? Do we not know? Whatever. And so obviously with that particular example, it's going firmly up because food productivity has expanded over time quite dramatically. This was looking at the period from the end of the Second World War onwards. We can simplify that just in a few bullet points and basically say that since the end of the war, there's been a big increase in provisioning, but there's been decreases in lots of other ecosystem services. Over the last 10 to 20 years, there have been discernible changes in the path of ecosystem service delivery. Some services still declining rapidly, some of them beginning to show a reduction in the rate of decline, partly as a result of various regulations. Others actually beginning to improve, but overall, by 2010, we've got a status situation where about 35% are still declining, some from very low levels, and about 20% are improving. The remainder, constant or unclear. We tried to come up with marginal values and also to use them. Most of these we were very interested in trying to get marginal value functions, if possible, rather than constants, because you would expect marginal values to change as the provision of a good changes. And then we tried to work out, when I say totals, I'm talking about totals of changes from a baseline under a set of different scenarios. I'm going to illustrate some of the procedures that we did by looking at those scenarios. Here they are, 6 scenarios. There was actually, each one of them is double because each one operates for a low emission and a high emission variant. You can see from the names the sort of things that these scenarios look at. Now, these scenarios were derived through a process that is not the way I'd have done it, but fine. It was a political science approach, talking to decision makers about the sort of future worlds that they were interested in or that they were worried in, and coming up with a set of functions which would end up with, which would be consequent from those different policies. We're going to look in particular at 2 of them. One's called Nature at Work, where there's a priority to enhance ecosystem services, and the other one, World Markets, where there's unfettered economic growth and trade liberalisation. Because we know we can predict for other periods, what we can now do is reassemble all the data, re-estimate it, and now say, well, what happens when something changes? And the thing that everybody's really interested in, of course, is climate. So what happens when climate changes? And climate is going to change quite significantly across the UK. You can see up there rainfall. It's actually going to get drier during the growing season. Temperature, thank God, it's actually going to get warmer. So what will this do to farming? Well, it'll change the pattern of farming quite dramatically out to the future. This is coloured with green being increases and red being decreases. And if we see here across this bottom layer a crop called oilseed rape, I don't know if you have it over here, but it likes drier conditions, and you can see all that green coming up as the future gets drier and warmer. Quite a number of areas currently used for dairying will actually become less suitable because of exactly the same factors. Areas getting drier, warmer, less suitable for pasture. What's this mean in terms of these scenarios? The scenarios vary not only climate, they also vary what's happening in policy. We can now put all of these values together. These are the initials of the 6 scenarios. Doesn't matter what they are, we're only just focusing on these end 2 ones here. So we've got nature at work and world markets. Remember the agricultural story. If we just look at market values, then nature at work stinks. It actually is worse than the present day. That's why I've coloured it red. Whereas world markets is fantastic. Nice green colour because it looks a lot better than the present day. It's actually the second highest net present value that you get out of any of the scenarios. It looks really good. But that's just considering one aspect of ecosystem services, provisioning. And we now know there's loads of them. There's carbon and recreation, all those other ones over there. And what's more, they all change spatially, and they change again under different scenarios. So you have massive change available to you. Now let's go back to that situation and add in all those other values. And you can see the result completely flips on its head. Actually, world markets is bad for the UK, for UK PLC. It actually generates a net value which is worse than the present day, whereas nature at work comes out with the highest value. If you're interested, all these results are on the web, and instead of just this simple ranking, you've actually got the monetary numbers attached to each one of them.